So welcome to this week's edition of Words with Wayne. Today we have a special guest. We're here in the Governor's Ceremonial Office with the Governor himself, the Honorable Brad Little. Thanks for being with us, Governor.
My pleasure, Wayne.
So most of our members know you and they know that you were a businessman. How do you go from being a successful businessman to being a successful politician?
Well, I was pretty fortunate that I had a lot of leadership opportunities in the cattlemen, the wool growers, the Idaho Association of Commerce and Industry, Idaho Business Week, Idaho Community Foundation, University of Idaho Foundation, all of those, and every one of them was a statewide position. So being in leadership in industry and agriculture transferred into politics pretty handily. It's different, but there's some similarity.
And you were in the Senate and then Lieutenant Governor, and now you've been governor for a year. So it's not that you're new at this, but in the year, has there been something that you weren't expecting? Any surprises?
No big. I got better parking, but you know, in the lieutenant governor, I had one and a half staff, and now I've got a really good staff. So instead of having to, if some issue comes up, instead of having to do a deep dive into it, I've got staff, and then the agency directors are very responsive. So the time from seeing a problem or an issue and knowing what the resolution of it is a lot shorter, which is very helpful, because I used to have to do everything myself.
Right. So when you put forward your budget this year, you made savings and rainy day accounts a big priority. Are you seeing something in the economy? I mean, the Idaho economy seems to be booming.
Last week, we had the National Governors Association, and they had a pretty high-powered economist there. And they asked a question about who thinks there'll be a recession next year, and it is relative to what kind of shape those states are in. You know, Connecticut and Illinois, they were going to be a recession right away. But almost everybody thought there'd be one in 3 years, 1, 2, or 3 years. But economists, by their very nature, are always reversion to the norm, and we've had a hell of a run. But it is going to happen sometime. It always does. It's 100% guaranteed there'll be a recession sometime. We just don't know when.
And so it's not necessarily, your planning isn't necessarily for a specific item. You just see, I mean, there's nothing specific that you see on the horizon that would worry you about Idaho.
No. I did ask a question. It was funny because the governor of Illinois was there, and Mick Mulvaney, the chief of staff for the president, was there, and about unfunded pensions. And ours is about 95%, and theirs is generously 50 or 60%. 23% of all the money he spends in the state has to go to fill holes in his pension fund. But government pension funds, private pension funds, the stock market just gets a little bit of a cold, and those pension funds will get double pneumonia. And so we don't have much exposure there, but it doesn't matter what'll happen. And for your members, the issue that we got to is if some of those things start going bad and all of a sudden cash has a premium to it and interest rates go up, whether you're building commercial, industrial, or residential, they're all going to be at risk if interest rates go up 150 basis points.
That's exactly what we've been seeing. It's not that there's anything in the construction market that we think is turning negative, but we're so dependent upon credit and developers that if anything in that market takes place, like a contentious election or something, it could upset our world as well.
Yeah, that's what we need to be, and that's why, you know, we need to stick to our knitting, do our work, make sure all our bills are paid, put money away for a rainy day fund, and probably lead up to your next question, invest in infrastructure. But I'll just let you do that. I don't want to ruin your mojo.
Many of our members are engaged in road infrastructure. It's been an issue you've cared about in the past. You're active in it even today. Do you have plans on that front that we could see into?
Well, something's going to happen. I think, but I've been wrong before. But I think there's enough issue. What amazes me is the polling, the most recent polling I've seen, says that putting more money into roads is like down there on the list. But coping with growth is almost the top of the list. And if we can make the nexus between the legislature and the public in Idaho, between the consequences of growth and transportation, I think we can get there pretty fast. We're going to have to make a case for it. People, you know, that's one of the good things about Idaho. People don't like to raise taxes, and that will continue to be the place. But, you know, I can make a real credible argument, and you and your members do all the time, that this is really a good investment. And as my predecessor said, not doing your maintenance is deficit spending.
It definitely is. And our members look at that, and the growth is an interesting question because, yeah, we want the new people to pay for it all, but those of us who grew up here have a responsibility as well.
Well, and right up there with growth is housing affordability, and if you put big impact fees on, then it exacerbates housing affordability. We had pretty robust discussions at the National Governors Conference about that, and you know, the states that you would anticipate all want to, you know, they've never seen a tax they didn't like to raise, and that's part of their mantra. And I'm not opposed to impact fees, but you better watch for the unintended consequences, and that's housing affordability and some other problems.
We definitely say that. You know, our other half of the family is in it does multifamily building, and it's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. If you get such a large impact fee to build the road that you end up not building the building, nobody wins.
Yeah.
So tell us, you've said, I've heard you say this line multiple times in speeches, that your goal as governor is to make Idaho the type of place where our children and grandchildren want to live. What's the Little administration doing to make Idaho the...
Well, I say there's three parts of it. Obviously, they want to make a good living. So higher wages, better incomes if you're an entrepreneur is key to it. But that's after tax, after regulation, and after the cost of health care. It's the net at the end of the year. If you're the kind of people that we want to either stay in Idaho or come to Idaho, it's that net. What's the cost of housing? What's the cost of health care? So we're working on all those things simultaneously to try and make the net at the end of the year for either our existing population, our kids that want to come back, or somebody who wants to look at Idaho, that it's the net of those. Obviously, secondarily to that is to have maximum opportunity, we've got to have a great education system. Literacy, competitive teacher salaries, those issues. We've got a lot of different initiatives all over the state and CTE that are going on. We're providing opportunity scholarships in the higher education area that's lowering the cost of higher education. But that education component of kids wanting to stay here, and if, let's say you're a successful Idaho student that left, started a company in anywhere on the coast or anywhere, and you're thinking about coming back, the first question you're going to ask, particularly if you're married, is how are the schools? Right. It's one of the key components of economic development is having quality schools.
Well, even people here, my wife and I looked at a home this summer, and lovely home, great neighborhood, lousy schools. We stayed put.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was the deciding factor on whether or not we were going to move. And so
no, and I'm meeting with all the state most of the state school superintendents this afternoon. There's a lot of good things going on there. Some districts are doing better than others, but I need to highlight the good districts and help the districts that are struggling to catch up.
Our members have spent a lot of effort and a lot of time helping those school districts with their CTE classes. We think that skills training is very important for the future of a lot of these kids. I imagine that's something that fits into your agenda as well.
Well, when I travel and people, whether it's a chamber, whatever the event is, and they ask about it, I says, you got to get with your trustees and your superintendent and your principal, because we have there are programs, and the fact that these kids, when they're in the 8th grade, are writing a career plan, you need to expose them to CTE opportunities. And it's different everywhere. There's some communities, Blackfoot's a good example, where they never have enough welders. There's other areas where in the Magic Valley where sophisticated skills to run a modern food processing facility. Obviously, in those 5 areas that are just boiling, construction jobs are critical, but that's, you know, that's, can they program the GIS information that goes into the heavy equipment? Can they operate some of these sophisticated equipment they have? Can they read the right set of blueprints to where they can be a foreman on a job? Those are all skills that are kind of different in each community, and frankly, it takes somebody to stand up to tell the school district they need to work on it. They only have so much discretionary dollars, and they should be responsive to those who show up and ask for the training.
Well, that's a great message. That's exactly what we've been telling our members. They have to go to the meetings, they have to show up. When the school calls and asks for volunteers, you have to be the first in line.
And get those kids out to your sites. I always remind my friends, be sure everybody with a new pickup parks in the front row, so when they drive in, they see those new pickups. Because to a lot of kids, that's a big deal, is be able to buy a new pickup, buy a car, start a life. But they need to know that those jobs, you know, the things, I mean, construction jobs are so much different than they used to be. Every one of those is different. Logging jobs are incredibly more, for every logger that used to be, or 10 loggers used to be in the woods, there's only one now because of the sophistication. And a lot of these construction sites, the technology and the equipment is just way different than it was even 20 years ago.
So final question, what can AGC members, they're located all across the state, what can they do to help you make Idaho successful?
Well, right now, help make my case to the legislature, that's one. B, participate in CTE. Get these school districts that don't have a good comprehensive plan, get them moving ahead to address the critical needs in CTE, and work with your fellow contractors and the people that this is a natural state for any business person, is to go out and want to have them trained for their specific job. And I understand that, but to get critical mass to move, whether it's your local community college or move the high school, you need a more collective show up and then participate in our incredible democratic republic, because that makes a difference. Those who show up generally win.
Good final words. Thank you, Governor. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks.